Can we also get another one for NCC? There is some. It is. We are sorted. May I call us to attention? Good day, members of the media, and thank you very much for responding this much by coming through to this press briefing that is being convened to communicate the positions of the parties that are gathered here. I'm going to read out a statement on behalf of all the parties and whose names we will mention, after which we will then have the parties themselves making remarks. Thereafter, we will then have a Q&A. I hope the order of proceedings is clear to all of us. This is a joint media statement by parties who are committed to the withdrawal of the VAT increase and the strengthening of the fiscal framework. Today, this is the 24th of April, today followed a principal engagement led by the African National Congress and involving parties represented in the National Assembly, including the Inkatha Freedom Party, Action SA, the Pan-Africanist Congress, Rise Mzansi, Build One South Africa, the United Democratic Movement, Al-Jamaa, the Patriotic Alliance, and the Good Party. We jointly address the nation to affirm the outcome of critical deliberations aimed at restoring public confidence in the fiscal direction of our republic. Over recent weeks, South Africans have observed robust and at times difficult engagements on the fiscal framework, discussions that touched the core of our national priorities, the burden on our households, and Parliament's constitutional mandate to act in the best interest of the people. These engagements have now culminated in a decision that reaffirms both the authority of Parliament and the imperative of people-centered governance. For the past 3 weeks, parties have been engaged in consultations amongst themselves and the National Treasury. The discussions required maturity above all and were all intensely focused on achieving consensus, which was necessary to resolve the budget impasse. We affirm the constitutional mandate of Treasury and that they have been responsive to the inputs and suggestions of the political parties in these engagements. This demonstrated that no one party is the alpha and omega in providing solutions for South Africa. A collective approach by all parties that represented here have put South Africa first and made sure that the budget is approved. It is now formally confirmed that the proposed increase in value-added tax, VAT, initially tabled in the March budget will not proceed. This outcome is a product of sustained, lawful, and transparent engagement reflecting the constitutional supremacy of Parliament as the final authority on public finances. Importantly, this outcome did not arise from expedience, nor as a concession to pressure or populism, but from a shared commitment across party lines that the working class and the poor and all our people cannot be further burdened in this economic climate. It is a decision firmly rooted in the national interest and in the moral clarity demanded by our Constitution. In line with the constitutional powers entrusted to it, the Standing Committee on Finance adopted a report which, 1, rejected the VAT increase proposal, 2, directed the Minister of Finance to table revised proposals within 30 days. This position has earned the support of a parliamentary majority, providing the democratic and legislative legitimacy for a revised fiscal path, one that keeps the people's interests at heart. Furthermore, parties are committed to a government-led expenditure review in order to maximize efficiencies in government spending. The integrity of this process must be underscored. It was Parliament, not the courts, not unelected bodies that led the resolution. This is a reaffirmation of constitutionalism and a victory for a democratic process. We are alive to the urgency that this process now demands from us to support the passing of the money bills and ensure that they are passed. We call on the Finance and Appropriations Committees in Parliament to move with urgency and ensure that the nation has a budget. All parliamentarians must ensure that we pass the bills and act in accordance with the constitutional mandate. As diverse political parties, we are united in our commitment to fiscal responsibility that is neither detached from reality nor blind to inequality. We are bound by a common principle that budgetary decisions must not deepen the suffering of the poor nor compromise long-term economic development. It is worth noting that the approved budget framework includes important interventions aimed at advancing South Africa's development. These include increased allocations for transport and logistics, infrastructure, support for dam projects to improve long-term water supply, additional funding to strengthen public health care and safety, and resources to support early childhood development. The framework also enables the extension of social relief of distress grant and opens opportunities within the public service, particularly for young people. Together, these measures reflect a shared commitment to a budget that is responsive to the people, promotes inclusive growth, and upholds the principle of fiscal responsibility. We also affirm that fiscal consolidation must not mean austerity for the vulnerable. Alternatives must preserve the social wage and enable inclusive economic growth. Treasury, in collaboration with Parliament, must continue to ensure sound, equitable, and developmental financing. This is not about claiming credit or asserting ideological dominance. It is about taking our role in ensuring that there's a responsibility in governing and defending the foundational values of the democratic project we all serve. We do wish to extend our appreciation to the Minister of Finance and the team at National Treasury for respecting the letter and spirit of parliamentary consultation and for engaging with parties on a bilateral basis. Appreciation to members of Parliament across party lines who conducted themselves with discipline and dedication to the constitutional mandate during this time of the budget impasse. To parties, and we wish to underscore this, to parties who are outside of the government of national unity, who acted with resolve to resolve the impasse in the interest of national unity and the stability of governance. And above all, to the people of South Africa, whose voices, petitions, and unwavering demand for fairness guided our actions and shaped the outcome. We also recognize all participating parties for honoring the ethos of multi-party democracy respecting differences, embracing collaboration, and placing the country above power. This is a victory for the people and for democratic institutions. This is not a victory for one single party, nor is it about who claims the loudest voice. This is a people's victory. It is a quiet but profound triumph of democratic institutions, as well as that of Parliament acting in an activist nature, which is expected of a democratic parliament. The withdrawal of the VAT increase, the reaffirmation of parliamentary oversight, including executive role in implementing, and the recalibration of fiscal priorities together represent a democratic maturity that must be defended and deepened. We recommit ourselves to the path of constructive dialogue, to ethical governance, and to ensuring that public resources uplift our people, stimulate inclusive economic growth, and bring us closer to a truly just and prosperous society. As I conclude, the next steps will include the following. A revised finance bill is expected to be tabled in Parliament. The legislative process that follows will be monitored and shaped by the shared developmental priorities, including shared strides towards inclusive economic growth, as expressed in the statement. We will continue to communicate transparently with the public and stand ready across party lines to ensure that the interests of the people remain the center of our fiscal policy and public governance. We end there. At this point, I'd like to call on the Secretary General of the African National Congress to deliver the message on behalf of the ANC.
Thank you, Mahlengi, on behalf of all political parties reading that statement. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, viewers at home, and all South Africans, colleagues from different political parties. First and foremost, as the ANC, we recognize that we have entered a period of coalitions at the national government level, which we may characterize as uncharted waters. Before, we used to engage differently with the budget. In the government of national unity and coalition government, we have learned our lessons in relation to how we seek to engage with matters of the budget. We may have performed better in these uncharted waters, approaching the budget as a political tool in the governance of any other country. The budget is key as a political tool to determine stronger governance in different countries. If we had a wealth of experience, we may have approached this differently, meaning negotiations and engagement with political parties among ourselves, with Treasury and Parliament oversight prior the passing of the budget is a new terrain that we all need to learn about and gain as an experience when dealing with this particular matter. We started from 2%, we ended to 0.5%. And in engaging with the budget. We made a submission to the Minister of Finance, like all other parties, after the 2nd of April fiscal framework vote in Parliament. We also held extensive discussions through this month, from the 9th of April, intensive discussions in the past 2 weeks in the same hotel with different political parties, even those who have chosen to go to court, to engage with them on the question of the budget. And that have showcased on our part that we've got a bigger role to play than just political posturing for the country. Even those that went to court, we engaged them. But we did not ask them to get out of court. They did engage, they did raise their views about the budget. And we do appreciate political parties that have come together to patch the budget framework. And these political parties never fudged their views, never fudged their intentions when they agreed to pass the budget. It was very clear that we need to deal and review the VAT increase. And today, after extensive engagement, it has resulted in the Treasury also coming to the party to agree with all of us that VAT review will not be implemented as it was presented before. And we welcome, as the African National Congress, that statement of Treasury. No disruptions, no instability, but the interest of South Africa come first, and of our people. And that is our interest as the African National Congress. Our view throughout these discussions was on defending the expenditure side of the budget in the interest of breaking the austerity cycle. South Africa have been presenting to us austerity budgets, and we seek to break away from that with the presentation of this budget. Without VAT increase, this budget is the most perfect budget in our view, because it addressed the question of growth in terms of the economy. That's one. Two, it cushioned the poor in terms of investing in social expenditure side of the budget. It cushioned us against austerity, which was very much important for the African National Congress. We explained the importance of inflation rate increases in other social security items and the retention of the of the SRD grant. We also pointed out the importance of increased allocations towards frontline services such as education and health to deal with the shortage of teachers and doctors in the public sector. Overall, our viewpoint was that political parties must think of alternatives to the VAT that also sustain the post-austerity cycle reflected in the budget. And this is exactly what has happened, and this is the result that we have actually welcomed here today. What Treasury is telling us is that where will the alternative means come from in terms of the budget? Treasury is addressing that particular point. We need to go backward to reset the pattern in terms of the budget. We agree with that. Overall, our viewpoint was that we believed then, as we still do, that the minister has the power to initiate and withdraw any changes to the VAT in terms of the VAT Act. Of course, there is a court case that is currently underway, and the courts will decide whether the current wording of Section 7(4) of the VAT Act is constitutional or not, as the DA seeks to suggest. Our approach as the ANC was based on its current interpretation, as granting the minister such powers to initiate or withdraw any changes to tax law by introducing a bill to Parliament. Parliament will then consider such a bill and pass it into law. So this is what we've understood, and we have never understood that this particular process in itself that we have embarked upon, it is a process that is dependent on one political party. It is a process that required conversation among us, and I wish to state as I conclude that the ANC, with all these political parties around here, agreed that we need to persuade, if we are able to find alternative means of funding the budget, the cutting of a VAT increase from the budget. And this week, we concluded those discussions. which started yesterday, and we got a favorable response from the minister that indeed there is a possibility that this could be done, and subsequent to that, a statement was issued to this end. So which means what has happened in terms of this process of engagement have brought us to where we are today, that the VAT increase will be cut from the budget as we reset the budget. I mean, as we reset the button on the budget. So we're very much happy about that process. It basically takes us forward, and it takes South Africa forward. We will engage continuously with political parties with regard to the process of resetting the button on the process of the budget going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the SG of the ANC. I will at this point call on Nkulego to come on behalf of the Nkatha Freedom Party. He speaks for the organization.
Thank you very much, Ngolosi. Good morning, Sanbonani. Just maybe a few things to say that a budget is a living dynamic, and it will constantly change as circumstances change, as developments actually happen. We started out with a proposal of 2% increase, which we rejected. In fact, we reject any VAT increase, but the circumstances presented to us compelled that 0.5 be considered, and that is the premise upon which we moved. Since that decision of Parliament, which said we've got 30 days given to the minister in the process to relook at the VAT question, this moment has now culminated, wherein a constructive decision has been taken that we will do away with the 0.5 increase. And the circumstances at play are clearly that SARS has collected more money, and because it has collected more money, we are in a position to adjust the budget moving forward. There will also be the medium-term budget policy statement in October, which will further refine the process moving forward. There is urgency in having agility in the budget. But we do want to reject the notion that has been presented by National Treasury in their statement, wherein they say that because of this withdrawal of the VAT, the social security nets will now have to be withdrawn. That is not the outlook we want to embark upon. National Treasury, SARS, and government must continue finding other revenues, streams for income for the budget in order to ensure that we maintain and sustain the social relief packages that are embedded in the budget. This includes the increases to social grants and other related grants. It ensures that the social relief of distress is maintained. It also must ensure that the zero-rated items basket must be expanded in order for the poor to actually continue receiving the relief that they so urgently need. What this moment teaches us, importantly, is that we will have to be a government in constant communication and talking to each other, not past each other. And there is no constructive conversation that's going to take place in a court of law. There is no constructive conversation that is going to reach us at the point of resolving our problems if we continue seeing the kind of big brother syndrome that characterizes some of the behavior that is out there. We believe that we need to return to the negotiating table. We believe that you can't be half pregnant. You can't be in government today and then in opposition tomorrow. Either you are in or you are out for the purposes of consistency within what we do in the budgetary processes and in governing generally, so that we can be in a position to resolve the problems. So we conclude by saying that we welcome this development, because initially we had said that the VAT increase was a temporary intervention. It was never meant to be long-term, and the outlook to review was there, and the fact that we have reviewed it even before implementing it speaks to the fact that we've been hard at work trying to find solutions, and that is what we are going to continue doing. What we need to appreciate is that the economy in the country is in dire straits, and moving forward, there will be tough decisions that we have to take. If you look at IMF, amongst others, downgrading or revising downwards rather our growth outlook. All those circumstances combined mean that tough decisions lie ahead. But the reality of it is that a budget is a living document, and it has been this collective here that has been able to save the day, and we believe that anybody else who masquerades as the Messiah of this moment outside this collective is wholly misplaced and misguided in terms of what is actually happening. We've been hard at work, and the IFP wants to thank the colleagues for the very difficult and constructive conversations that we have had, and that's what we need to continue doing. We're not going to find our solutions in the courts or in the streets. It's the tough conversations around the table, and today is a victory for South Africans delivered by this collective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Hlengwa. May I, at this point, invite the President of Action SA, Mr. Herman Mashaba.
Members of the media, leaders of political parties, both inside and outside of the GNU, and most importantly, you fellow South Africans. It gives me great pride to say to you today that the VAT increase is gone, thanks to the collective efforts of parties that engage the ANC in total good faith. As you have already heard, when South Africans wake up on the 1st of May 2025, Workers' Day, they will pay the same for their goods and services as the day before. This is what Action SA promised from day one, and it is exactly what this collective here today has delivered. This VAT increase has become a symbol to many South Africans who are heartful and want to see change in their country. Today, we celebrate more than just the scrapping of an unjust tax. The reversal of the VAT increase is a victory that belongs to you, the people of South Africa, and to our maturing multi-party democracy. Let us celebrate that you denied any political party a majority and the power to determine budget unilaterally. Let us celebrate now that because of this, no one party can impose their will on you, the people of our country. Let us celebrate how you spoke out against the VAT increase, how your voice was heard by the parties gathered here today. It is with humility that I acknowledge this achievement was made possible by the political parties before you today, who acted on their wishes, unlike those within the GNU who merely claim to fight for you. The parties gathered here today have worked together, both inside and outside the GNU, in the best interest of the South African people. However, as the President of Action SA, let me share our unique perspective and role in shaping of this event. As you know, Action SA is not a member of the GNU. We respectfully decline the invitation in favor of being a constructive opposition. We said then, as we say now, that Action SA will lend its support to the government when doing so to serve South Africans without holding that back. And we said that would be the point of opposition spear when a tough opposition is required. Over time, Action SA has become increasingly concerned about the unprecedented budget crisis that has developed under the GNU. Even from the opposition benches, It was clear that our national budget was being held hostage by certain parties within the GNU to negotiate about matters that had absolutely nothing to do with the budget. Action SA respect the rights of parties in the GNU to negotiate. This is, after all, a cornerstone of a healthy coalition. However, one thing must be made clear. At no point can South Africans or their democratic institution be asked to pay for cheap political point-scoring aspirations. As the famous African proverb says, when the elephant fights, it is the grass that suffers. The uncertainty of this budget crisis took place at a time when our markets were already reacting to tariff imposed against our country, while municipalities were meant to be consulting citizens about how budgets would be used for their service delivery. From day one, Action SA's decision to intervene was based on resolving this crisis and removing the VAT increase and no other consideration. There have been no discussion about joining the GNU. There have been no position promised to Action SA. There have been no position sought by Action SA, and that's important to note. When engaged by the ANC's negotiating team, Action SA agreed to end the budget crisis by supporting the fiscal framework in Parliament with the strict condition that the VAT increase must be removed. On this was not negotiable. As ventilated in court papers on Tuesday, the VAT Act of 1991 prescribed that VAT would increase on the 1st of May 2025, irrespective of what transpired in Parliament. This was never a dispute. Parliament effectively had two choices to avoid this. Either amend the framework as proposed by the DA, EFF, and MK. That would have set the already delayed budget back months with the imminent 1 May VAT increase. Or, alternatively, pass the framework and work alongside other parties to find revenue alternatives to the 13.5 billion arising from the 0.5% VAT decrease. Action SA chose the latter as the only pragmatic option to prevent a 1 May VAT increase, and today that decision has proven to be correct. It was our Member of Parliament, Mr. Alan Besley, who raised the condition for VAT reversal to be placed upon our support for the fiscal framework, which was ultimately adopted by Parliament. In simple terms, Action SA rejected the budget as long as the VAT increase remained in place. Today, our position has been vindicated. Despite this, what follows was a deliberate and well-funded misinformation campaign that misled you, the South African people, falsely claiming that Action had supported a VAT increase. While some continued to play politics, Action SA made extensive submissions of revenue alternatives to the Finance Minister and began a series of engagements with the ANC and other parties. During these engagements, both parties publicly committed to a VAT reversal before the 1st of May 2025. Today, we have witnessed that our objective has become a reality. There will be no VAT increase, not because of any court case that opportunistic parties now seek to falsely claim credit for, but because of principled, good faith negotiations grounded in substance rather than extortionist, unpatriotic, and shamelessly dishonest politicians. It is highly appropriate for me to acknowledge the ANC and the Finance Minister for their role in our negotiations. Our engagements were conducted in total good faith, with maturity, with the best interest of the people of the country in mind. Nobody attempted to mislead or dupe anyone else, as claimed in some media circles. There was an absolute focus on the budget and nothing else. Let it be clear, the reversal of this VAT increase was not achieved by the parties that were in court on Tuesday. The VAT reversal was achieved by political parties that were willing to put their differences aside and demonstrate the maturity required to find an alternative to a VAT increase. These parties adopted a fiscal framework with the strict condition that a 30-day period would be used to assess revenue alternative to a VAT increase. During this period, We actively participated in submitting alternatives around which engagements were held to explore their viability. The announcement by the minister this morning and this press conference takes place within the context of that process. It is indeed quite bizarre that opposition parties outside the GNU had to step in and negotiate what a particular political party inside the GNU preferred to pursue through the courts. What bizarre. That is a matter for the GNU to address, not a concern for Action SA. Ultimately, the coalition future of South Africa is based upon political parties with majorities having to work together to achieve positive outcomes for the South African people. As many of you will recall, Action SA used to adopt a position of defining itself against other parties, declaring which parties we would work and wouldn't work with. We have matured since then. We have come to realize that in a world of coalition politics, Action SA must be willing to work with the political parties that can best serve the South African people. Look no further for the benefits of this approach than in our capital city of Tshwane, where Dr. Nasipi Moya and the multi-party coalition government she leads are turning a city that has failed over many years. Look no further than the fact that VAT will not increase on the 1st of May. We made this commitment and we have delivered on it. The reality is that Action SA has achieved more with its 6 seats outside the GNU than much larger parties that have achieved while fighting their own government at the expense of the South African people. Ladies and gentlemen, many of you will know that my grandfather played a critical role and significant role in my upbringing following the death of my father when I was just 2 years old. You have likely heard me share this many times, how he taught me to listen what people say, but to trust what they actually do. It is in this spirit that I can now account to the South African people. First, Action SA stood unwavering in its opposition to the VAT increase from the moment it was announced. Second, Action SA made a commitment to the South African people against all odds that would work to stop VAT increase on the 1st of May. Working with these parties, Action SA has delivered on this commitment. And I'd really like to thank the South African people who were prepared to listen to reason and really listen to sensation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much from Action SA, Mr. Mashaba. At this point, I'll call on the Patriotic Alliance, which is represented by Mr. Kenny Wunene. Thank you.
I'll be very short. I think Mr. Mashaba has taken some of my time. I think the SG of the ANC has outlined the process that we engaged in. The Patriotic Alliance is part of the GNU, and we operate within the GNU. We rejected the VAT increase from the beginning, and we deliberated with our partners within the GNU. We want to also put our position on what Leader Hlengwa said of the IFP on the statement by Treasury. I am not going to go too deep into the process, but I must say that NCC, Action SA, and BOSA negotiated in good faith. They did not try to extort the GNU. The Democratic Alliance, in its negotiations over VAT increase, made some demands. The Democratic Alliance indicated that they will vote for the VAT increase if a certain port was privatized, if the NHI was removed, if the Bella Act was removed. So the DA was going to vote for VAT increase had the ANC and the GNU parties agreed to be extorted by them. So when the extortionists could not get their way, they ran to the courts. So the DA has no moral authority to claim victory for the removal of the VAT increase. They were outside of the process of engagement. The parties that are sitting here can take credit, and South Africans. The ANC and the Ministry of Finance listened to the engagements that happened at the beginning, and and Treasury reduced VAT from 2% to 0.5%. That was because of the engagements within the GNU and the parties outside of the GNU. Further deliberations happened, and these parties persuaded the Ministry of Finance and Treasury to consider alternative means of making up for the shortfall. So the Democratic Alliance waking up this morning after seeing the statement of the minister and claiming victory is quite hypocritical, because they have never rejected the VAT increase at the beginning. Instead, they tried to use it to privatize what South Africans own. They tried to use it to get positions in the GNU. They tried to use it to change what Parliament has already resolved on. So a party of extortionists has failed to serve South Africans on a very important matter of national interest. So South Africans, don't be misled. We saw this morning that the Western Cape was full of posters and boards claiming victory. That court process is not done. The court have not dictated to these parties or to the GNU to remove VAT. Therefore, they cannot claim victory. We appreciate that the Ministry of Finance have heard the parties that are gathered here. They've understood that we serve constituencies, and they've understood that our concerns emanate from the mandate that we're given by our different constituencies, and therefore removed the VAT. I will end here, and thank you very much to Action SA, to BOSA, to NCC. We cannot underscore their willingness to negotiate and to vote for the fiscal framework, although they were outside of the GNU. It shows that they understand that national interests are more important than party political points. I thank you very much, and thank you to the SG for leading these negotiations, very impartial, with an ear to even some of us. The Patriotic Alliance remained committed to the GNU, and we hope to see a different face, a different composition of the GNU in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much from the Patriotic Alliance. At this point, I'd like to call the Pan-Africanist Congress which is represented by the Secretary General, Mr. Boy. Or shall I say, Comrade Boy?
No, thank you. And thanks, members of the media, all South Africans at home. SG, with the speech from the Action SA, I think they indeed deserve a seat in the GNU. That was a ministerial speech. The Pan-Africanist Congress of Tanzania welcomes the outcome of an extended principal deliberations on the 2025 fiscal framework, which have resulted in critical victory for the working class and the poor. There will be no VAT increase. From the onset, the PAC firmly rejected any tax policy that burdens the poor. Instead, we constantly called for bold and practical structural reforms to address systematic corruption, administrative inefficiency, and elite tax evasions. Today, the outcome is a direct result of the pressure, clarity, and commitment brought forward by progressive forces in these engagements. Those who opposed these engagements were never with the poor. Let it be known, those who condemned these engagements and tried to sabotage the efforts to reach a solution to a budget impasse were never aligned with the interest of the poor. They opposed Land Expropriation Act. They denied the dispossessed Africans their dignity of the land restoration. They fought against the Bella Bill, which is designed to guarantee equal quality education for children in historically marginalized communities. And now, they opposed a process that ultimately blocked a VAT hike, a regressive measure that would have worsened the hunger and inequality. These voices do not speak for the poor. They speak for the chaos, slogans, and obstruction. We need to cut on corruption, not basic services, not access to quality educations. Our message remains: fix the broken state before squeezing another cent out of the poor household. We must eliminate waste, close procurement loopholes, and hold departments accountable for audit outcome. Wealth must carry the weight. It is time for the wealthy and the corporate giants to contribute their fair share to tax. We need progressive tax reform that shifts the burden away from the working class. Government must close loopholes and clamp down on illicit financial flows that rob the country of much needed revenue. The people's budget is non-negotiable. The PAC continues to advocate for people's budget, one that reflects the lived experiences and priorities of our communities. We support participatory budgetary process at local, provincial, and national level. Fiscal decisions must be guided by the people, not elites behind closed doors. Jobs and justice, not austerity measures. We are firmly opposed to any austerity measures as the Pan-Africanist Congress of Tanzania. We wish for the funds to be redirected towards SMMEs, youth empowerment, and township and rural development. Invest in infrastructure, skills development, and industries that create jobs and dignity, not inflated bureaucracy and redundant administration. The Pan-Africanist Congress of Tanzania, PAC, stands for African dignity, economic justice, and accountable government. Our people cannot be taxed deeper into poverty while the elite waste continues unchecked. This victory is a moment of progress. but not the end of the struggle. The fight now shifts in ensuring that real transformation happens in this country. We will not rest, we will not retreat. We will continue to advance the cause of the African majority with discipline, with principle, with revolutionary clarity. As the PAC, we indeed welcome the initiative which was taken by all political parties that are represented here. Their commitment towards making sure that instead of sloganeering, instead of shouting from the rooftops, we engage as South Africans towards finding solution. I thank you.
Thank you very much from the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania. I will at this point call Ms. Patricia DeLille to reflect on behalf of the Good Party. Ooh, sorry, that's fine.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. I want to start by making an appeal to the Fourth Estate. Some misguided reporter this morning said that South Africa must thank the Blue Party for going to court and stopping that. We must get the independence of the Fourth Estate to be respected. Certainly people are entitled to their opinions, but they're not entitled to their own facts. Because the fact is, what we are witnessing here today is a budget victory through principled negotiations and political maturity. And so we must make an appeal that we keep that balance, because the truth will always survive. We can't continue to be supporting these lies, even in terms of the performance of the government of national unity. We see reports as if some of these things by achievement by some of these ministers is new. When in fact, go and check the facts, you will see that ministers before that started these processes. And it was not just because some new minister come in from the GNU. The lies must stop. The reporting of lies must stop. We appeal for that balance. Let me get to the budget victory for all the parties here today. These are the parties representing the poor, because we are sitting here as the majority vote in Parliament, not pretending to represent the poor. So the Good Party welcomes the withdrawal of the 5% of VAT hike. And as a party, we have actively and constructively participated in the process of finding a solution. And throughout the process, we acted in good faith, with a clear focus to safeguard the poor, the critical social spending, to make sure that we continue with the social distress of relief grant, and that we continue to invest in infrastructure. So we welcome the fact that Parliament's resolution to adopt the fiscal framework, along with the recommendation that the Minister of Finance urgently review the proposed VAT increase, that has brought us here today and implemented it with urgency. And this recommendation and the outcome of that, it is rooted in principled negotiations by all of us sitting here today. And let us all be clear that this is also not a result of litigation or political grandstanding. It is a result of us all here today present putting our country first. So I hope that as we leave here today, and as our political and as our democracy mature, that the lesson that we've learned out of this is that we must at all times put the people of South Africa first and not our political parties. So I want to commend all the political parties present here today. The past 3 weeks, we have been actively, all of us, engaged with the ANC. And the ANC have listened to all of us. We have made written proposals that were considered. So it is a joint and collective effort of collaboration with and amongst all of the parties here today. So thank you, and may God bless you.
Thank you, Auntie Pat.
I must bless you also.
Thank you very much to Auntie Pat from the Good Party for those reflections. I will then call on Rise Mzansi to come forward, represented by the leader, Songezo Zibi.
Thank you very much, and good morning. One of the most important things about the culmination of this process was that the finance minister needed to own the decision and make the announcement first, because the role of the treasury is written into our constitution. It enjoys a certain level of independence that must never be compromised. I also want to thank him for engaging earnestly with the proposals that have been put forward by political parties. He has made Treasury officials available to carefully consider the proposals put on the table. So as we do this and as we move forward, it is important that we understand that we cannot create a scenario where we have a treasury only in name, but not in substance. We have an outcome today that the finance minister feels comfortable to own, together with the parties that hold a majority in parliament right now. That is the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is that this process has been about freeing the finance minister from extortion. We can now proceed with the budget without also having to talk about legislation that has already been passed by parliament. This is what this has been about. We cannot hold budgets hostage to other political priorities that have nothing to do with appropriation. I want to invite my former colleagues in journalism, speak to fixed income analysts and economists. Ask them how the bond yield curve has looked since the 19th of February. I can tell you our debt servicing costs have gone up by more than 30 to 35 billion rand. Because as a political party that wanted to hold the budgeting process hostage. None of us were happy about the VAT increase. But I said on the 19th of February, repeatedly, that there will be no culmination to this process where nobody takes tough decisions. We must be prepared to take tough decisions. I also want to put something in perspective. The VAT is 0.05% of a 2.6 trillion rand budget. 0.05%. Political parties are sitting in court because a majority to sit in a room and discuss matters that relate to the budget and the budget only is not there. We must not succumb to misinformation and the disinformation that has happened over the last 2 months. The finance minister is now free to do his job. The law says Parliament must approve or amend the budget. As the finance minister's statement says, we must now go back and find 75 billion rand over the next 3 years. In a budget that will clear 7.8 trillion. It's not a lot of money. We must have the resolve and the maturity to do it and to do it in a way that does not negatively affect poor South Africans. Expenditure reviews will happen. It is not up to any political party to say they are the alpha and omega of how to make Parliament more efficient. I'm the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. I know very well, to minute detail, the level of waste there is in the government. And to propose that the Treasury has done no work on expenditure reviews is a lie. I have the spreadsheets. They run to tens of pages. The job of Parliament is to do the work and not do political grandstanding. We can't make South Africans wait longer for land justice because someone knows the VAT issue will be emotional.
Yes.
And they use it. We can't break up Transnet so that a political party can have its own in a province that it runs. We cannot break up the passenger rail agency so that a political party can have its own. Those were the points of extortion. And we must challenge them. This is not the time to mislead the South African people because we know the people are desperate. There are those who claim some of us were fools who didn't know what we're talking about. We're standing here today. We've got a solution. The court case is not done. There's been no judgment and no legal settlement. Yet they're claiming victory, but I can tell you, all of the points of extortion they placed on the table, they're not on the table anymore. If anybody wants to reverse legislation, they must earn a majority, amend the legislation, take it back to Parliament, and win that amendment to the legislation, following consultations with South Africans so that you can look them in the eye and tell them why they must wait longer for justice to be delivered. The final thing I want to say is this. Budgets are about expenditure priorities. What is important enough for the government to fund? Please go and ask those political parties that have had a lot to say what it is that their priorities wanted in this budget. They have never said so. Never. Yet some of us, we've said we want South Africans to be able to get onto trains that are safe, that have got air conditioning, and cost 40% of what they pay on taxes. We marched with unemployed doctors so that they can get jobs. That's provided for in this budget. We campaigned on food security and extending water to many rural communities. There's 423 billion rand over 3 years in this budget. None of them have spoken about what their policy and expenditure priorities are because they find it easier to run and campaign on an issue than to solve the problem. Difficult days still lie ahead. There are still difficult days lying ahead because we must still clean up the government. We must eliminate waste. We must hold the corrupt accountable, some of whom are in Parliament. It's going to be difficult days ahead. But I think it's become clear who's got the maturity to be in the room when tough decisions have to be taken and who's not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. From Rise Mzansi, may I call on Mr. Musimaimane from Obosa.
Bagaitsu dumelang. And I want to say now that the decision to remove VAT has been taken, it would be amiss of me not to wish South Africans a happy Freedom Day. Let me thank the parties that are represented here. Speak to South Africans. The day of the budget vote, the question that was put before the House was not whether you want VAT or you don't want VAT. Whilst VAT is an important component of the budget, the question that was put before South Africans is, do you want a fiscal framework that whilst it may include VAT and it is going to be adjusted, you want a fiscal framework that will focus on education, that will focus on safety, that will ensure that we have a growing economy. We faced a tough decision as Build One South Africa. we had to stand up before the people of South Africa and say, to reject one component and ignore what is a basket of services that are put in the budget to shield poor South Africans. Shielding poor South Africans isn't just a question of zero rating items. Shielding poor South Africans about making sure that classrooms in quintile 1, 2, and 3 have teachers in them so that you don't have full classrooms of over 70, but you provide in the budget so that there are more teachers. It's about making sure that hospitals have got nurses and doctors. It's about making sure that those who travel from distant communities to places of work have got a public transport system that can work for them. These are the questions that, if you are genuine about building a South Africa we want, and you want to be responsible, you have to stand up and say, how do we work towards these? And how do we achieve those? I promised on the day when we voted that as Build One South Africa, we'll do everything we can to make sure that the 0.5% does not go ahead. And I want to affirm that that began an extensive process. It began a process at which, through the African National Congress, we're able to engage and share some of these thoughts and these questions. We're able to speak to National Treasury and put proposals about how we can raise revenue and make sure that ultimately, when we go to the second part of the budget, which is part of the Appropriations Committee, a committee I chair, that when we look at the Division of Revenue Bill and the Appropriations Bill, we would be able to amend using the Money Bills and Related Matters Act to alleviate wasteful expenditure, do the appropriate reviews, and ensure that we never get around to the increase of 0.5%. Fellow South Africans, I think it's important to acknowledge the extensive amount of work that has taken in the last number of weeks, and in the place where it can only take place, which is to stay in the room of Parliament. And I want to say, I want to be grateful and thankful to the parties that are here for the leadership exercise, the patience, and the willingness to hear and affirm the work that Treasury now needs to do. But what is clear in common cause is that today, whilst be a victory and a victory for the people of South Africa, is only but a start. The work must continue. The Minister of Finance correctly states that multiple bills now have to be tabled before Parliament. And as the statement read out earlier on today affirms, that Parliament now needs to begin the work not only of engaging GTAC as far as spending reviews are concerned, but we have to find reforms that achieve growth. The reason you end up needing VAT is inherently because we've grown at 1% for the last 10 years. So now the job is, let us ensure that we have a resilient economy that can grow so that our social spend can be catered for in the budget going forward. And I, along with the finance cluster, which is the Portfolio Committee on Finance, the Portfolio Committee on Public Accounts, and our Portfolio Committee on Appropriations, commit ourselves afresh to putting in all the hard work that is necessary to ensure that by the legislated time frame, a budget is put before South Africans, passed legally, and can ensure that it achieves the very things that we seek to achieve. May I affirm that ultimately it will require more work on the part of Treasury, and we have to engage it. And lastly, as Parliament then meets to consider this, we have to work with the speed and the urgency cognizant of the fact that we hear the people of South Africa. May I address the final question, which is to the people of this country? Many people have been, as would, placing on social media various things about how their respective companies have sent them letters telling them that VAT is going up. And that's a legitimate process. But I want to say to the people of this country, we're living in a new reality and a new terrain. This is a space that, as coalition and as the future of this country, we're going to have to learn through. I want to ask for your patience. As difficult as that is, I need to ask you for that. Because at the end of the day, we are going to have to work together as we learn the new terrain, but achieve what we collectively want with leaders who are willing to stay in the room, engage, listen to you through public consultation processes, and be able to ultimately, you're not going to get everything that we want. But we've got to work together to reform so that we can grow and ensure that South Africans are included. So I do beg your patience, and I do want to reaffirm, I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone that is here, that it was never born out of malice to try and confuse as others have gone to different parts. It is born out of genuinely trying to find the best solutions for the people of this country. And when we entered these negotiations, we did so with the ambition of trust and the bona fides of each of the political parties. If you can't get those two conditions on the table, then you will negotiate backhanded, you'll end up doing things that do not serve the people. But if you sit down and are earnest and say, let us go through the process in this new reality where multiple parties have to find themselves in the room, I believe we've learned some important lessons now. We will learn more lessons in the medium-term budget policy statement, and we will ensure that come February next year, the delays and all of those issues will be taken out as we look at even how the budget-making process takes place to ensure that we achieve the ambitions of the people. For us as BOSA, we had to put up our hands and say, let's fight for education, let's fight for safety, let's fight for an economy that grows, and that's contained in our budget. And let's do the work that has been tasked to us in the Appropriations Committee to ensure that all the spending reviews, all the work that we need to do about an efficient government is done. And that remains still our commitment, and we want to invite you along with all the political parties to say, as we focus on the future, this is a new terrain, but I think together we'll end up on the other side better, as we are today, as the people of this country, to say, fine, now we have a budget that will go ahead. It doesn't include VAT, but here are the adjustments we are going to make. And in the next year, it will continue to get better as we learn to walk this new road. So in conclusion, I wish you all a pleasant, happy Freedom Day. And goes.
Thank you very much to Musi Maimane. I'd like to invite the Al Jamaa party to Mr. Hendricks to address the media.
Good morning, assalamu alaikum. The work that has been taking place during the past 3 weeks, is the work those who died in the trenches expected political parties will engage in on the eve of Freedom Day. The 2025 fiscal framework of the 7th Parliament captured the imagination of Al Jamaa as it moved away from austerity measures and started to focus on frontline services like more doctors, more dams, more bridges, and a cherry on the top, an above inflation increase for social grant recipients, including older persons and child support grants and grants for people with disabilities. Al Jamaa considered these small changes revolutionary while we have slow economic growth. Parliament has timelines, and delay passing the framework would have caused for me as Deputy Minister of Social Development anxiety amongst 45% of the country dependent on social grants. So Al Jamaa wanted to help remove that anxiety. We supported the fiscal framework because it had an escape route of 30 days, which Parliament granted to address 2 concerns Al Jamaa had with this framework. The one was the VAT increase, and the second concern we had was the expenditure adjustment if this revenue stream is lost. Al-Jamaa assured the ANC, in spite of the two concerns, that Al-Jamaa will not delay passing the rates and monetary bill and the budget. For Al-Jamaa, parliament processes are the heart of our democracy, not our courts. Before the expiry of 30 days granted by Parliament, some parties went to court to cause instability. Some say the first steps for regime change and a return to apartheid. So some of my colleagues referred to the Democratic Alliance as extortionists, and others referred to them as kidnappers. I don't know what I must call a political party that undermines Parliament. Maybe the Fourth Estate can come up with a suitable headliner. Imagine the anxiety for 28 million social grant recipients, including children depending on social child support, while the Democratic Alliance is involved in the games that they play, trying to be extortionists and kidnappers, and the headliner we hope the media will supply us with. So we hope that DA will never govern. I just want to also say that the grants I referred to supported 80% of the class of 2024 to pass matric with the food security that it provided. Al-Jamaa thanks the ANC for the extensive consultations, and we reminded the ANC of the position of Chief Albert Luthuli, their former famous president, who said, "Let my people go," and under the present circumstances, that meant no VAT increase. Al-Jamaa's concern now is the possibility of expenditure adjustments, but the ANC has facilitated direct engagement with National Treasury. To conclude, Al-Jamaa would like to call on the Minister of Finance, please, no unilateral expenditure adjustments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much from Al-Jamaa. I think I am left with two organizations. I ask members of the media to bear with us. We are quite a large group. I'd like to invite the United Democratic Movement.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the session, Bendisho Buslibel. Slibel basiphethe amajoni pha sawuse sikudubule. On behalf of the Deputy Minister of Defense and the President of the UDM, General Holomisa, the UDM welcomes the National Treasury's decision to scrap the VAT increase. And we are satisfied that the GNU has taken this bold step after careful and long collaboration to ensure that we put the poor masses of South Africa first. And this is a call that we are glad the Minister of Finance has heeded. I wish to state that contrary to the populist statements that are out there, the UDM did not support the proposed 0.5% VAT hike. Instead, the UDM supported the 2025-2026 budget fiscal framework, which then meant that it is on condition that the Minister of Finance explores the alternative revenue proposals that are at bay and were submitted by various political parties. In line with this, we must actually mention that we submitted to the Standing Committee of Finance, specifically on paragraph 6.29, that we are asking for the review of all of these measures. We must state to South Africans that a state without a budget, unfortunately, is a doomed state. My colleagues that are standing here have already mentioned this at length, but it should be emphasized that without a budget or a fiscal framework, the government definitely means that it will be shutting down. There will be no department that can legally spend on any of the procurement plans they have in place. Furthermore, it means that the salaries of the public servants, meaning the teachers, the nurses, the soldiers, the police, are not going to be paid, meaning that government would actually come down to a halt. Constitutionally, it means that we would be in crisis. The Constitution, supported by the PFMA, mentions and states that no funds may be withdrawn from the National Revenue Fund without the consultation of the legislation and without the approved budget. Unfortunately, it means that all government operations would become unlawful, an issue that the UDM does not support completely. It would mean that there is a collapse of service delivery, even extending to grants, SASSA grants, as well as NSFAS. It would mean that emergency response units, such as your SAPS, healthcare, all come to a halt. And this would ultimately lead to a political fallout, where it means that there is a vote of no confidence in the government of the GNU, effectively invoking Section 216 of the Constitution. I must state that no political party or single political party can claim victory over this specific milestone. It is a win for the people of South Africa who deployed us to govern in the government of national unity and advance their interests. I must also state the government of national unity is not a convenience, but a contract with the people of South Africa, who declared through a vote that they do not wish to be governed by a one-party government. As such, this is a warning to all of those Beyoncés of the GNU that we will not tolerate le Beyonce bayenzayo. We will not tolerate these Nicodemus tendencies that they are doing, your kwekwa at night, behamba bekhupha statements. If you want to be in the GNU, govern. But if you do not want to be in the GNU, the opposition benches are very much open for all of those who do not wish to be in the government of national unity. Because this opposition is not necessarily the first instance. They started with the Bella Bill. They followed with the Land Expropriation Without Compensation Act, knowing very well that the parameters are given for certain exclusions. And they went further on to now stand and oppose the fiscal framework, knowing very well that this specific VAT hike was one of the measures that was one of the line items that were going to be deliberated on very much. So we will not allow le Beyonce bayenzayo. If bafuna ukuchwechwa ebusuku mabahambe baye kwi-opposition benches instead of babakhupha statements at night. We are standing here as the UDM affirming to South Africans that sinimele ebuhulumenteni, and we will forever advance your interests and specifically the interests of the poor. That is why we voted against the budget, the VAT hike. And we voted specifically to put a framework into place, because a government without a framework or a fiscal framework is a doomed state. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my brother. Without ado, and last but not least, I'd like to call the National Coloured Congress to come to the fore and address members of the media.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The NCC is not part of the GNU, but when called in the interest of the poor in the country, the NCC decided to join. and we had our discussion, and we made our input. And I must tell you, in all honesty, our input was minimal, because on entering the room, we could sense that there was a commitment here to do away with that. There was no real fight. I want to applaud every one of the 11 parties here today, and I want to say thank you on behalf of the poor people of this country. But this is no victory. It's just a step in the right direction. We'll start winning when we start reducing that. That's the day we pop champagne, SG. I want to ask the media to please remember, people like Ashley Kriel and Solomon Mshlango died so that you could be our watchdogs. When I say our, I mean all of us. When I switched my television on this morning, I was nauseated, because a party that is part of the GNU was claiming a VAT victory despite the fact that there was no court ruling. As if our 3 weeks of hard talks and disagreements meant nothing. Our people died so that white people would never again talk down to us or belittle us. Today the media allowed them to. As if us, people of color, standing right here in front of you, our IQ, our intellect, our ability was challenged on TV. The Democratic Alliance played no part in this. This was our work. This was us coming together saying, let us put our differences aside and understand why we are here. The media needs to tell John Steenhuisen that I doubt that he's smart enough to be a strategist, and Alan Zille is too old to be a diva. Because I remember a very famous DA member once saying, what is bad for the country is good for the DA. These people create crisis because they expect all people of color to be stupid. They must be honest and say, we would have voted for the VAT if you allowed us to own the ports, the roads, and the rails. If you allowed us to turn the Western Cape into a bigger version of Aranya, we would have no problem with a 0.5% VAT increase. If you had allowed us to keep your children caught up in gutter education, we would have voted for the VAT increase. If we had allowed us to hold on to your stolen land, we would have voted for the VAT increase. I wish Helen Zille's surgeon would inject some truth into that Botox, because nothing but lies comes out of that mouth. This right here was an issue of this country's very security. Our lives were at stake. But you see, white supremacy thinks nothing of playing with the lives of the poor. We stand here with major differences. I have very little in common with Rise Mzansi. I have very little in common with Bosa. But today, they are our comrades. We can't be full-time opposition. There are days when you have to work together. The Democratic Alliance chooses to be an opposition within the government, however that might make sense. The NCC is proud to have done a service to South Africa today, and we look forward to doing many more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Lots of terminology in the room. Now turn to members of the media. I know that you won't be as long as politicians in your questions, so that the responses are also crisp and can give more people enough opportunity. I'll start there with SABC. So hand up, Prof.